Lies, liberation and long-range power, Ukraine strikes back. Russia said their offensive was a success, but Ukrainian calls it a lie. Ukrainian forces just liberated Novoekonomichne after 63 fire clashes in one day. And the big reveal: meet Lone Neptune, Ukrainian powerful new missile that could change the game. Welcome to Ukraine. Today I'm Darislava Kolesnikova, and in this episode we break down fake reports, real victories and the missiles that's making Russia nervous. Let's dive in. Ukrainian army: Russia's spring-summer report is a lie. Russia claims success, but Ukraine calls it pure fiction. The Ukrainian General Staff has slammed the Russian military's official spring-summer campaign report, calling it a lie from start to finish. According to Kyiv, the so-called offensive ended in failure, with no major gains and huge losses. So what's really happening on the front lines right now? And how far is the Kremlin willing to go to hide this truth? Full breakdown in our report.
Caught 36 hours after the crime. A suspect in the murder of Andriy Paruby was detained in the Khmelnytsky region. The perpetrator has already given his first testimony. Police officers and employees of the Security Service of Ukraine were able to directly track down the alleged killer just 24 hours after the attack. Meanwhile, in Russia, yet another wave of propaganda is being spread. Pro-government Russian media are portraying the murder of the Ukrainian politician as the elimination of one of the Euromaidan leaders, with the blood of hundreds of Ukrainians on his hands.
Andriy Paruby was at the origins of the coup d'etat in Ukraine in 2014. He led the so-called Euromaidan self-defense. It was Paruby who gave orders to the snipers who fired on the anti-Maidan protesters and Berkut officers.
And while Russian propagandists are busy writing new scripts full of lies, in the Krasnodar region, drones attacked an electrical substation. Some Russians were left without power. In addition, residents of Yelabuga in Tatarstan reported explosions, and Rosaviatsia announced the closure of the airports in Kazan and Nizhnekamsk. There were also explosions and fires in temporarily occupied Crimea. Special forces from the GUR's Ghosts unit struck military infrastructure and destroyed several targets. Among them were an S-400 complex and a radio telescope. But in Russia, despite the enemy's defeat, they continue to talk about victories at the front. On August 30th, Gerasimov summed up the results of the spring-summer combat operations. The Russian general claimed successes by the occupiers in their active advances on several fronts at once. But all of this turned out to be lies. The Ukrainian General Staff noted that these offensives by the occupiers ended up achieving virtually nothing.
Not only did the so-called summer offensive of the Russian occupation forces fail, but in 4 years of active combat, the occupying troops have not managed to accomplish even tactical level objectives of the so-called special military operation, namely reaching the administrative borders of Donetsk region. At present, about 33% of the territory of Donetsk region remains under the control of Ukraine's defense forces. By the way, Gerasimov's report contains completely different figures. Supposedly, 27% of the territory of Donetsk region is under the control of Ukraine's defense forces.
Even Russian military bloggers criticize Gerasimov's blatant lies. They accused the Ministry of Defense of exaggerating successes at the front.
For the Russian side, especially the military and political leadership, it is extremely important to show something against the backdrop of the outright failure of the so-called special military operation. At least some notable successes, even at the tactical level, are needed to reassure the Russian public amidst the truly unprecedented level of personnel losses and casualties. Let me remind you that, according to both Western intelligence communities and the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, the occupiers' losses have already exceeded 1,100,000 personnel.
Meanwhile, CSTO exercises have begun in Belarus. According to statements from the General Staff, they are practicing the planning of the use of nuclear weapons during these exercises.
The nature of the statements from both the Russian and Belarusian sides regarding the scenario of the exercises, including the rehearsal of the possible use of tactical nuclear weapons, should be regarded as elements of information operations by Russian special services. It should also be specifically noted that previous information from both the Russian and Belarusian sides about the redeployment of tactical nuclear weapons to the territory of the Republic of Belarus has not been confirmed.
According to experts, the information about the redeployment of the ultra-modern Oreshnik weapon, with which both the Russian and Belarusian dictators try to scare the whole world, has also not been confirmed.
Ukrainian forces liberate Novoekonomichne, 63 clashes in one day. Victory on the front line. Ukrainian defenders have liberated the village of Novoekonomichne near Pokrovske, pushing Russian forces out. The General Staff of Ukraine confirmed the breakthrough, another step forward in the fight for freedom. But the battle is far from over. Since the start of the day, 63 combat clashes have been recorded across the front. Where is the fighting most intense now, and what's next for Ukraine's counteroffensive? Full update in our report.
The defense forces have stopped yet another attempt by Russian occupiers to break through in the Pokrovsk direction. The enemy launched a mechanized assault on the Progress Malinivka sector, involving 7 armored vehicles and up to 100 infantrymen. However, the crew of the Ivan Franko group unit, in coordination with the HIMARS crew, delivered a devastating strike to the assault armored group, completely destroying it. 5 vehicles were destroyed and 2 more were immobilized and abandoned by the Russians. Enemy personnel losses ranged from 50 to 100 men. Meanwhile, drone crews from the 77th Separate Airmobile Brigade struck Russian positions in their area of responsibility. As a result of the pilots' actions, a Russian army ammunition depot, 1 radar station, a passenger car, a motorcycle, and 7 Russian occupiers were destroyed. Meanwhile, in the Lyman direction, the enemy carried out assault operations toward the settlements of Karpivka, Shandriholov, Yampol, Dronivka, and Serebryanka. In the Pokrovsk direction, Russian occupiers tried to push back the Ukrainian armed forces in the areas of Zapovedne, Udakhne, Novoekonomichne, Myrolyubivka, Zverev, and Dakhne. In the Novopavlivka direction, the Russian army attacked in the areas of the settlements of Zeleny High, Podubne, Shevchenko, and toward the settlements of Filial and Kamishevaka.
Advancing into the steppe zone, requires a certain amount of forces and resources, which the enemy does not have in sufficient quantity. But despite this, and here a political objective arises, Putin needs to show that hostilities have begun in yet another region of Ukraine, and therefore, despite everything, the task is set to advance forward. And the intense fighting is now actively taking place for various settlements strategically located on the crucial border between the significant Donetsk, the vital Dnipropetrovsk, and the important Zaporizhia regions.
In the Kramatorsk direction, fighters from the 5th Separate Kiev Assault Brigade delivered a powerful strike against the positions of the Russian occupiers using FPV drones. As a result of the coordinated work of the drone operators, enemy infantry was eliminated and the enemy's dugouts and shelters were destroyed. Thanks to this, it is becoming increasingly difficult for the Russians to gain a foothold and hold their positions. And in the southern Slobozhansky direction, Ukrainian border guards delivered a devastating strike against Russian army positions in the border area. In a single night, aerial reconnaissance pilots together with fighters from the Strix unit destroyed a Russian army drone launch site and as many as 11 enemy shelters. Operators of the 93rd Brigade Kolodny Yar demonstrated the coordinated work of 2 types of drones. The company of ground robotic systems Alter Ego sent a ground drone loaded with explosives to a bridge that Russian occupiers were using for logistics and shelter. When the unmanned vehicle drove onto the bridge, it was struck by another drone, an FPV drone, which acted as the detonator. Meanwhile, drone operators from the Signum Battalion on the Lyman front have reduced the number of vehicles belonging to the Russian occupiers. Ukrainian FPV drones have claimed at least 4 Russian army vehicles, 2 SUVs, and 2 vans.
Ukraine unveils lone Neptune missile, game changer revealed. Ukraine is boosting its missile power, and the latest development could change everything. Meet the lone Neptune, a newly updated version of their famous Neptune missile, now revealed by Ukraine's defense forces. Military experts believe this long-range weapon could strike far deeper than ever before. What targets can it reach? How does it work? And what does it mean for the battlefield? Full breakdown in our latest report.
On August 24th, the official state portal, Zbroya, published the first images of the missile on its social media page, which experts have identified as the Long Neptune. This is a variant of the R-360 system.
This missile was actually created even before the full-scale Russian invasion. It is known for being the very missile that destroyed the missile cruiser Moskva in 2022. And this anti-ship missile was originally designed with the understanding that it could be further developed.
At that time, Volodymyr Zelensky, during a press conference with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, spoke about the use of long-range weapons.
We are using our domestically produced long-range weapons. And lately, to be completely honest with you, we haven't really been discussing such important matters with the United States of America. That certainly used to be the case, but things have changed. You remember there were various signals regarding our retaliatory strikes after their attacks on our energy infrastructure. That was a very long time ago. Today we don't even mention it anymore.
Let us remind you, the President spoke about the successful combat use of the new missile back in March.
We have achieved significant results. The long Neptune has passed its tests and has been successfully used in combat. A new Ukrainian missile, a precise strike, a range of 1,000 kilometers. Thank you to our Ukrainian developers, manufacturers, and military personnel.
There are no details about its specifications yet, but it is known that the missile is designed to strike ground targets.
We are saying that, in principle, this missile allows us to carry out operational, tactical, and to some extent strategic tasks. That is to say, we are asserting that we possess the capability to effectively strike crucial and strategically important logistical routes, significant ammunition depots, vital oil facilities, or, for instance, essential oil refineries, thereby impacting their operational capacity and overall functionality.
The missile is already being compared to its previous version, the Neptune anti-ship missile system.
A tremendous amount of work was done to teach the missile to fly over land. And as I understand it, there is a difference between flying at a constant altitude over the sea surface. It's a different matter when you need to follow the terrain, to understand that it has to fly around various hills.
The new missile is 1.5 meters longer. There is no exact information about the weight of its warhead. In the previous version, it was 150 kilograms. The missile could cover a distance of up to 350 kilometers.
What about in the long Neptune version? 1,000 kilometers? There is no information. But what, precisely, is the point? If you've already successfully increased the range, then by carefully reducing it back, you can significantly increase the weight of the warhead.
Despite the lack of official data, the long Neptune is already being credited with attacks on Russian oil refineries, including the strike in March this year on 2 apps in the Krasnodar region. However, this is only speculation, says Anatoly Krapchinsky.
In any case, a series of strikes took place for practical application, that is, combat testing under real air defense systems and real electronic warfare systems.
At the same time, the expert adds, the Ukrainian Flamingo and Long Neptune are forcing the Russians to respond to the rapid growth of Ukraine's defense industry.
The Russians are already responding, and we can see, for example, isolated statements from the likes of Lukashenko, who noted that Russia is supposedly ready to agree to an air truce because Russia understands the further we go, the more we build up our capabilities and the more effective we become in striking the territory of the Russian Federation. This is evident from the oil refineries.
There is no information on when the Long Neptune will enter serial production. At the same time, experts emphasize that this missile is cheaper than Western-made models. Yulia Chikichina, Ihor Kovalchuk, Rada TV channel.
That's all for today on Ukraine Today. If you want more truths, real victories and expert insights, like, comment and subscribe to stay with us. And don't forget, become a sponsor and join our growing community. Your support keeps independent Ukrainian journalism alive and strong. Stay strong, stay informed and stay with Ukraine.